There's another side, which is, of course, the expense side of the equation. And over the next couple of these sessions, I'm going to spend a lot more time on the expense side. I'm going to assume away that there is demand and revenue and that side is working. So I'm going to put some boxes up here when we talk about insourcing. So some kind of roles that you're very familiar with. We got our CEO. I guess traditionally speaking, we got our COO. Since we're talking tech startups here, we got our CTO, sort of in terms of major roles. And then, but there's lots more of them. What else can we rattle off here? CFO. It's not always a C-level role, although arguably it should be. CRO, and here I mean Chief Revenue Officer, so whoever's head of sales or sales/marketing. Well, not always marketing, because sometimes that gets split out, or maybe more often than not, and maybe it should be, but there may be a CMO, and then some of these, might be shared. So we have that. And then we've got the notion, let's see, what else do we have? We've got kind of these major roles. And then we have some more minor roles that aren't necessarily C-suite, but that are things that you got to do to keep the business running. You obviously have HR. You maybe have, if you don't have a GC, well, there's still a legal component that has to be handled somehow. And then you, of course, more often than not, this is not done in-house, but you have something in the vein of bookkeeping, tax, accounting, that sort of piece. And maybe that's combined over with CFO. But all right, so we've got a bunch of roles here. And wow, that right there is a pretty big team by itself, 9 people. I think it's pretty obvious that most startups actually don't have someone filling all of these roles. But I do feel like I see startups reaching for trying to fill these roles, maybe more aggressively than they need to be. Maybe you don't always need to have a person in every seat. Okay, so what seats do you have to fill? Well, by default, you have to fill the CEO seat because somebody has to be in charge. This being since we're talking about tech startups or innovation in that sense, well, then you got to have this role. I don't think that there's really much negotiation there. You really do have to have someone, and maybe this is the same person, but somebody's got to bring sort of overall leadership to the table. Somebody's got to bring technical leadership to the table. And then what else do you really have to have? Well, you really have to have somebody that does some form of heading up of sales and heading up of marketing. But now I'm going to start crossing some boxes off, at least in early stage. You don't need a COO because you don't have anything to operate. So what is the COO even going to do that the CEO doesn't already do? In newsflash, for those of you who think CEOs are about strategic management of all of these people, no, CEO means you do every job that didn't get done. That's what CEO means. It means that you literally take out the trash. I've done that. You do the yard work. I've done that. But you also, if you are of a technical bent and you're wearing that other hat, maybe you're rebooting the servers. Maybe you are doing the HR. Maybe you're doing the finance. Everything else that needs to get done, it's your job. If it doesn't fall to anyone else, it's your job. So there's that. In terms of what else you don't need or need to figure out a way to handle, well, you got to figure out a way to handle your finances. You got to figure out a way to handle your legal, any legal concerns you may have, finance or rather tax concerns you may have, and then HR. Let's go ahead and cross that one out as well. Because as founders, or as a founder, you should feel yourself fully equipped. You've got to do your own HR. Simple as that. So we can cross off a couple of roles, but when we talk about insourcing, I'll just give you an example of myself at my last startup. I was this, I was this, I was this, and I was this. So I occupied, out of the boxes that we actually needed, I occupied those 4. And then my co-founder Raj, was the other roles that needed to be filled. So he actually happened to come from a legal background. So he was the acting GC, but he was sales and marketing. And oftentimes I find that these two are roles that you can and should combine, at least in the early days. Whoever is selling, can hopefully help run the marketing, or certainly be responsible for it, for helping manage whoever's actually doing it on a day-to-day basis. But hopefully they can actually help do it and get their hands dirty so that they're responsible for their own leads to some extent. So yeah, this is how we had things. There was, 4 of these roles that I did, and 3 roles that Raj did, and 2 that we just ignored. Ignored in a sense. We did HR ourselves. I mean, I guess you could relabel this and say that we both did it. And we both, COO is effectively just management of all the other tasks anyway. So, when we talk about insourcing, it's that in a 2-founder company, I'll just put it this way if I reframe. In a 2-founder company, the 2 founders need to be doing everything on this board. Go to lawyers as little as possible because they're expensive. Use services like Carta, like Capbase, like Gust. There are others. There's Stripe Atlas. I mean, there's a million of them out there that help you do, that help you just incorporate and get your sort of early stage paperwork in order, your cap table, all that stuff. And then you got the Cooley documents, in terms of having documents, Cooley Go, it's called. Lots of free high quality documents. Of course, there's the Y Combinator Safe. So there's really, I hear a lot of founders paying all this money to lawyers to structure their company. And I'm like, wait, what? What are you doing? It's somewhere between free and less than $1,000 to use all of these services. And versus your median attorney, the documents that these services are turning out are probably on average higher quality because they've been vetted for this purpose, by, very top of the line folks in the legal field. Similarly, on the CPA side, I get that most people don't want to do their own taxes. Okay, fine. I'll give you that. I actually did do taxes at last startup, actually even current one. I don't think you should do that forever, but I think in the early days, it's a way to kind of, be able to sort of do that quickly and get past it if it's something that you're comfortable with. But if not, I mean, you should still be using software to get it in order. And hey, I'm going to put it out there. There are versions of the TurboTaxes of the world that are, B2C in the sense that they're meant for regular people to be able to file taxes for a business. It's not rocket science, people. They make it sound a lot harder than it is. So if you've got a great, the other option here, of course, is that there are lots of fractional offerings and things that you can do in this vein to keep that cost down. But yeah, you should not be sending a lot of money out the door for these kinds of professional services just to get yourself up and running. And you should be doing all the rest of this stuff in-house. I have been seeing a lot of startups that have only one founder, and it becomes a struggle. I'm going to be honest, it just becomes a struggle. I think, can you hire these roles? Yeah, you can, but that takes real money, or it takes giving away of enough equity that, well, they're co-founders then, and that's okay. That's actually what you need if you're a solo founder. But yeah, when you don't have the technical capability, you're not the CTO, it becomes incredibly expensive to hire someone of the caliber you would actually want for cash. So could you do it? Yes. Is it going to cost you more than $200,000 a year? Absolutely. You will not get, in almost all cases, for cash alone, I'm not talking about equity, for cash alone, the caliber of CTO you need unless it starts with a 2 and maybe a 3. And so how do you square that circle? That's what equity is for. They want upside too. And so that being a co-founder relationship is the most appropriate way in my mind to solve that when it comes to early stage startups. And notice, by the way, if you haven't noticed, I currently CEO of Fraction. Am I talking my book here? No, I'm not talking my book here. I'm giving concrete advice, right? I should be trying to sell you a fractional CTO, right? No, I'm not going to do that, because the truth is that that's too expensive. We've seen that the quality needed generally can't be afforded at the early stage. So maybe possible later on, it's not possible at the early stage. That's just true. The only way it might be, or that it is possible, is via equity, and that's what you call a co-founder. So this is, this part of the picture. But the insourcing, I mean, just to take it a little bit further into the roles, whoever's wearing that CTO hat, if they're not spending 50% of their time writing code, they don't deserve that hat. Whoever is wearing the CRO or head of sales hat, if they're not spending 50% of their time actually selling, they don't deserve that hat. And similarly on the CMO side, they better be actually writing, running, testing the ads, or the SEO content, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you got to get in there and do it yourself to a certain extent. Doesn't mean you don't use outside providers some, but if you don't do some of this yourself, how are you going to know whether or not the outside providers are doing it well? How are you going to know that there isn't another idea worth trying? Nobody cares about your business more than you do. So you can't outsource, all of these, roles. And when I say outsource, by the way, I also mean in terms of hiring early stage employees. That too, it's not outsourcing, but it's fundamentally not the same as having the founding team do it. So when it comes to insourcing, the optimal team can handle, like, whether it's 2, 3, I mean, maybe it's even 4 co-founders, but it's almost always more than one person, because while I'm sure that there's one person that exists in the world that has all of these skills, they don't have enough time in the day. So somewhere, 2 to 4 people that are equity comped, not a lot of cash comp, so that it keeps you lean. That's the kind of insourcing you need in order to run a team that, as you scale, is capable of hitting, profit margins that enable you to bootstrap your way to success instead of needing a whole lot of capital. See, the flip side of this coin is you see a lot of VC-backed startups taking a very different approach, where because they've raised the capital, they try to hire their way past these problems. The challenge is that at the earliest stages, you can hire the best people and they're still not going to figure it out, because nobody knows anything about your new product. The only person that knows anything at all, if it's anything about your new product, is you. So from a sales perspective, you've got to be involved. And that's why, I come back to this, the insourcing being so important. If you can't do it, it's quite likely that nobody can anyway. And so this magic idea that funding is going to solve that problem is really quite spurious. And generally, I'll take that a little bit further. I see so many founders who are, they're looking around. I mean, everybody, so many folks, they're looking to raise funding. And I'm not saying that that's wrong in and of itself, but the idea that the funding will somehow solve the difficulties or problems of executing across all of these roles couldn't be further from the truth. All it does is it buys you runway to do the exact same things. So maybe it lowers your stress level a little bit temporarily, because then you get close to the end of your funding cycle and you're stressed out again. So no, I would say that the approach that I have gone by and that I recommend to founders is try and use insourcing and try and conquer as many of these roles as you can in-house, internally, within your tight co-founding team. And what you'll find is that you're going to build skills as you go. You're going to leverage those as you grow. And that will, if you have raised money, it will extend your runway. If you are bootstrapped, then it's going to mean that you're going to hit, like a cash flow break even that much sooner, and then finally be able to pay yourself and head toward the actual 50% margins from there.